Hello to our watchers and Happy New Year for 2021. If you've been watching our previous videos on this channel, you'll know that before Christmas we did a series on how to teach children about the Nativity story. We've done a part 1 video on Matthew, a part 2 video on Luke, and as promised, this video, part 3, will be bringing the Gospels together and talking about how the beginnings of Mark and John are also important when we're thinking about teaching children about the Nativity story. But first, why did I split up the Gospels into books? Why didn't I just teach about the Nativity story? Why did I have to do 2 videos, one of Matthew, one of Luke? Well, that's because one of the things that I can't stress enough is that we need to read the Bible in context and teach our children to read Bible stories in context. When it comes to reading the Gospels, that means reading each story in the context of the Gospel that it was written in. Each of the Gospel writers selected the stories that they told and arranged them in a particular way to suit their audience and to communicate slightly different topics about who Jesus was. They were all telling the same true story about Jesus though. So I'm not saying that it's wrong necessarily to ever take them and tell our children the story of the Nativity with details from both Matthew and Luke and even John. But what I'm saying is that if we, the adults who are teaching children about the Nativity story, understand why Matthew and Luke told their stories differently, we'll be able to help children understand those themes, which will better prepare them for reading the Bible for themselves. So, how can we bring the beginnings of all 4 Gospels together to help children grasp a fuller picture of Jesus' origin story and who Jesus is? Start by talking about the Gospel of Mark. The Gospel of Mark does not include a story about Jesus' birth or childhood. It starts with Jesus meeting John the Baptist and being baptized by him. The title that Mark intended his book to have was The Beginning of the Good News of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. By that he means the entire book, not just the beginning of the book, but the whole book. The Gospel of Mark is the beginning of the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. What he means is that the world had been waiting all this time. There had been so much bad news. This was the beginning of a time of good news, a beginning of a new age governed by the good news that Jesus had come to save sinners. Mark, like the other Gospels, is also an ancient Greek biography, and the beginning of an ancient Greek biography would traditionally be concerned with the origins of the person that it's written about. For Mark, this isn't a story about Jesus' birth or childhood, but it's a story about Jesus' baptism, which reveals him as the Son of God. In fact, the opening of Mark's Gospel is an introduction to the Gospel using the Old Testament. In a way, he's telling the origins of the gospel or of the good news. He starts by quoting Isaiah from Isaiah 40, which is a chapter all about hope, right after a book that has, until that chapter, been about bad news of Israel's sin. In this, he's equating John the Baptist with the messenger in Isaiah 40, and he's equating Jesus with the good news that is expressed in Isaiah 40. Likewise, the beginning of John's Gospel is vital in understanding who Jesus is. The Gospel of John is the book that tells us explicitly that Jesus existed before he was born. It starts with a poem describing Jesus as the Word of God through whom the earth and the world were created. If we didn't have the Gospel of John, it would be easy to think of Jesus as some great man who God used, or we might think of Jesus' existence as having begun at the time of his birth. But John tells us explicitly that Jesus existed before his birth, that he was with God and that he was God. Sometimes when children grow up hearing about the Christmas story, the Nativity story from Matthew and Luke, they get the impression that Jesus did begin to exist at the time of his birth. So this could be a good thing to check if you have children. Have a talk with them, ask them, what do they understand about this? When did Jesus begin to exist? And along with telling children about the Nativity story from Matthew and Luke's Gospels, we also need to talk to them about Jesus' pre-existence and about the Trinity. Now, John knows that the Trinity is a mystery, and he doesn't explain it any further than saying that the Word was with God and the Word was God. Kids and adults alike, when we hear this, we want to understand it better because it kind of defies human understanding. So the way that I like to explain this to kids is to tell them, humans can't fully understand God, but God had a plan to help us to understand him, and his plan was sending Jesus into the world. Because Jesus was fully God and fully human, we can understand him, and when we know him, we know the Father. This is exactly what Jesus said when Philip, his disciple, asked him to show him the Father. Jesus said, "I have been with you all this time, and you don't know me. The one who has seen me has seen the Father." So be encouraged. When your kids are reading the Gospels and getting to know Jesus, they are getting to know the creator of the universe. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to check the description below this video for information where I got my sources from and links to our website. See ya!